Shalomi homies. In light of the fact that President Trump has recently passed an executive order to fast track research for the use of psychedelic medicines in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I wanted to share my own experience with the use of psychedelic plant medicines in the treatment of my own complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and make a few statements or share a few opinions about how I feel about this possibly being introduced into the American culture. The use of plant medicines has been very positively transformative for me. It has helped me to heal a great deal. I have done those medicines in conjunction with a number of other things. I have approached the issue from many different angles. Therapy, somatic exercises, plant medicines, meditation, spiritual practices, right? So it's not just a magic bullet, in my opinion. For those of you who do not know what ayahuasca is, which is the plant medicine that I feel has been most transformative for me and that I'm going to speak at length about now, let me tell you what that is. I've also used MDMA, also very helpful for me, and psilocybin, also very helpful. But ayahuasca, I would say for me, is the queen. Grandmother ayahuasca for me has been the most helpful and the most transformative. Not something to be taken lightly, not for the faint of heart, not a game, not fun. It's medicine. So I'll explain to you a little bit what it is. Ayahuasca is a brew that is made from combining two plants together to make a tea. The two plants are the ayahuasca vine and the chacruna plant. The chacruna plant is a broadleaf understory plant, and both of the plants grow in the Amazonian rainforest. Now, the psychedelic compound that you are experiencing when you take in the ayahuasca brew is dimethyltryptamine. We actually produce dimethyltryptamine as human beings endogenously. It's released when we are born, and it's released when we die. Trace amounts of it are also released during the dream state. I believe the visions that we are having and we are dreaming are a result of a sort of psychedelic experience brought on through the release of endogenous dimethyltryptamine, which means dreaming is a psychedelic experience. Now, in order to ensure that we don't go around tripping all the time as we, go about our lives, the body suppresses the psychedelic effect of the DMT with an enzyme in the gut called monoamine oxidate. Okay, this is an enzyme that breaks down neurotransmitters. Because of the way that it breaks down the DMT, we don't get the psychedelic effects, which is helpful for us to stay alive. If we were tripping out all the time, we'd probably get hit by a bus or something, right? So these two plants are combined together because one of the plants contains very, very high levels of DMT. That's the chacruna plant, the broadleaf understory plant. Okay. The ayahuasca vine has contained within it a monoamine oxidate inhibitor. So that means when you make a brew of these plants and you drink it, you get the high levels of the psychedelic molecule and you get the benefit of having the suppression of the enzyme in our gut, which normally makes the psychedelic experience impossible, right? It inhibits that MAO that monoamine oxidase inhibitor, it suppresses that. And then we get to have a psychedelic experience. We go on a journey. The mind is expanded, right? The brain, in many ways, acts as a reduction valve for our consciousness. If we were taking in all of reality all the time, which is what psychedelic medicines in part allows us to do, if we were having that experience all the time, we would not be able to survive, because we would get hit by a bus, eaten by a lion, we wouldn't be able to engage with reality in the way that we need to get things done, right? Which doesn't mean that a psychedelic experience doesn't have benefits. You just need the right space and container for it. So I'm digressing, but this is what the brew is, okay? It's a high level of DMT combined with a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. Okay, so the first time I ever did ayahuasca, I've done it 3 times. The first time I was in my late 20s, I think I was 27. I was living in a meditation community. So I was surrounded by people who were very concerned with the expansion of consciousness, the heightening of awareness. And so things like psychedelic medicine were talked about, because psychedelic medicines are used for that purpose. So that's how I even came to know what ayahuasca was. So once it came into my field of awareness, I started studying it. And based off of all my research, I came to the conclusion that this might be something that could help me. But also based off of my research, I had concluded that this is not something that I should seek out, because if it was meant for me, it would find me. Because what I had also come to learn and understand was that this plant was alive. It was aware. It had its own consciousness. And that's how it's able to help people. And that consciousness, if it was meant to find me, would find a way to get to me and communicate that message. This is how I decided I was going to approach it. That I was going to let it knock on my door. And if it did, I would answer the call. And because God has a sense of humor, someone literally knocked on my door with an offer of ayahuasca. I was managing an 8-unit apartment complex in Iowa, in an intentional community. I lived on site. One of the tenants came and knocked on my door one night. Now, this is after about a year of me studying and researching ayahuasca. This woman was pregnant. She told me that she had been invited to participate in a plant medicine ceremony, but because she was pregnant, she was unable to do so. And she wondered if I might like her spot. But even if I wanted her spot, I would have to consult with the facilitator, because it's invite only, And I asked her to tell me more. It turns out it was ayahuasca that she was talking about. So I met with the facilitator. I was invited to participate. It was a shaman from Peru who had come to this meditation community. The experience for me, my first go around, was very mild. I was grateful for that, because there were a lot of people there, and I feel that there wasn't a proper ratio of participants to space holders. I think everybody should have someone with them to make sure that the journey is going smoothly and safely. I feel that was not the case, and that because of that, I think they watered the medicine down some so that it wasn't so intense. So I was grateful for that. I had some mild visuals. I saw skeletons, eyeballs coming at me like giant sperm, like eyeballs that were swimming. I had gone into the ceremony with the question, the intention of wanting to heal my mother wound. Now, this is what you do when you come into an ayahuasca ceremony. You let the shaman, the facilitator, you let them know what it is that you want to ask of grandmother ayahuasca, what it is that you want to be revealed to you, what it is that you want to be healed. Okay, so that's what I was taking in. So, given that information, the shaman will hold that in his mind as he's coming around the circle, singing to all of the participants. Everyone who's taken the medicine will receive a song. It's called an Icaros, that the shaman will sing specifically to you based off of what it is that you're wanting to engage with, the issue, the thing you're wanting revealed. So the shaman came and he sang to me. And like I said, I had visuals. It wasn't too uncomfortable. I don't believe I even purged. But then for about a week after the ceremony had ended, every night I had dreams pertaining to the mother wound. So the plant continued, ayahuasca continued to work on me very gently. And it was tremendously healing and helpful. And it lasted. It really brought me to a new level of acceptance around my relationship to my mother. Cut to 2019. I had just ended a 5-year romantic relationship. I had bought a home with this person. We'd made a life together. It was pretty devastating for me when that relationship ended. And it brought up a lot of attachment issues for me. So I decided that I would revisit ayahuasca because it had been so helpful for me the first time. And this time I wanted to deal with my issues that I had pertaining to my family at large, my extended family, because I had stepped away from every relationship that I had no relationship with anyone that I was related to, and I still don't. Because I had realized that the only way that I was going to be able to heal was to take space and remove myself from that toxic dynamic, because my family had made me the scapegoat. So as long as I was around, I was the whipping boy, I was the trash can. No one wanted to take responsibility for their own issues. So I realized that that wasn't conducive to my healing. And it also would not, it was loving for me to step away. It was a loving thing for me to do for my family members as well, because they were never going to take the responsibility or feel that they needed to step up as long as they could convince themselves that I was the problem. If I wasn't around and they were still having problems and issues, then obviously, you got your own issues to deal with. So it was a loving thing for myself and for my family members to make that decision. And I still stand by that. So that's why I went to Peru. I went to Peru with a friend of mine, and we went and stayed with a shaman and his wife for 10 days. And I did ayahuasca twice during that time, and I actually have my journal from that time where I wrote about my experience as it was happening. And it's cool that this journal is snakeskin, because the snake is often associated with ayahuasca, because the snake is symbolic of transformation, and ayahuasca is a transformative experience. I didn't buy this because of it. I had this laying around at the time that I went to go on the trip, and I just grabbed it, and then I thought, oh, that's cool, So I have my snake journal here, and I'm going to read to you a few excerpts from my journey to Peru. And then I'll say a little bit about, how I feel about this and other psychedelic medicines potentially being introduced into the American culture. Okay. September 4th, 2019. So this is like 6.5 years ago. Last night around 6 p.m., we arrived at Shamanic Vida in San Sebastian after 2 days in Cusco and a visit to Machu Picchu. Shortly after our arrival, we met with Paco, the shaman that will be leading our ayahuasca ceremonies. He gave us an idea of what we might be experiencing, though he did say that everyone's journey will be unique and perfect, and that we will each receive exactly what it is that we need from the medicines. Paco then gave each of us a dose of rape, a plant medicine in a powder form that is blown up each nostril to clear out the sinuses and activate the pineal gland, the third eye. This is in preparation for drinking the ayahuasca to create more receptivity for the medicine. We then ate the seed of the rape plant, which I believe is a tobacco plant, which is meant to clean out your system prior to the ceremony by acting as a mild diuretic. Directly after speaking with Paco and receiving the rape, I went and sat around the fire with others for a while before retiring to bed. So then I go to bed. The rape never made me purge, though I did have a dream, which I believe may have been influenced by the medicine. At this point, the dream has faded. I have no specific storyline, but the message was that time is an illusion. And this was imparted to me and explained to me by a number of runes lying in a riverbed, a dry riverbed. The runic-like symbols were carved into the river stones, black river stones. I held one in my hand, and the symbol that stood out to me the most began to speak to me telepathically. So this is the symbol that was on the stone, the rune. I remember saying out loud in the dream that I'd already had this dream many times before, and though I understood that time was an illusion, it really made no difference in the culture that I was living in, because everything hinged upon the consensus reality that time does exist. And the response that I got from the rune was, as a thought telepathically, that I keep having the dream because time being an illusion is a fundamental truth which should be informing me on a very basic level, rather than pushing that information aside because of cultural conditioning. Okay, this is what the rune told me. Okay, so September 5th, 2019. Last night at 7 p.m., we had our first ayahuasca ceremony. Over the course of the week, I will do 3 ceremonies of ayahuasca total. On the first night, you are given a smaller dose to gauge how you will react to the medicine. With the dose given, I had a very mild experience. I did not purge at all and only had some mild nausea and a few visions. Black snakes flitting about, and the head of a snake attempting to push through an opening which I believe was my intestines, maybe symbolic of something that needs to be purged and transformed. Later today, we will be doing a San Pedro ceremony. So I wrote about the San Pedro ceremony. I'm not going to read that, but I will share the second and final ayahuasca ceremony, which I did, because after the message I received during that ceremony, I didn't feel like I needed to do another. You know, when you get the message, hang up. So, Okay. September 7th, 2019. At 7:30 p.m., the ayahuasca ceremony began in the Maloka. That's a circular hut. Okay. I was the last one in the circle to drink. This time there was more medicine. About 30 minutes after drinking, I purged, throwing up twice. I was concerned it may have been too early and that possibly there would be no medicine left in my system to take effect. But I laid back down on my side, and sometime later, I'm not sure how long, my mind found itself in a nightmare state. There were no visions, only incredibly uncomfortable and painful emotions, that of my own, due to my past traumas, and also that of the earth itself and all of the creatures on the earth. Though I was screaming and crying and wailing, it also seemed that my body was doing these things on its own. And though it was scary and uncomfortable, I was an observer of what was going on rather than the cause of it, it seemed. In addition to the wailing and crying, I howled throughout the night as well, especially when Paco was playing music. Though again, it did not seem to be me howling, but a creature using my body to communicate in sadness. A coyote. So when this was happening, I actually remember hearing the howling and not realizing that I was the one howling and thinking, where is this coyote? Like, what is going on with this coyote? And then I realized that my body was howling, that the sound was coming out of me. And it was a very sad, mournful cry. So at some point, I felt as if I was dying. I was yelling, get the fuck out of my body. I was writhing around, hitting the ground with my fist. I experienced myself as a seething mass of black snakes. I believe my traumas were dislodging and moving through my body. Perhaps they were dying. Then I experienced what seemed to be a rebirth, actually going through physical sensations of shedding my old body, as if the old body were now too small and I was struggling to slough it off. A giant black snake inside of me slithered up my spine and looked out of my eyes, looked through my eyes. So I was seeing the room as the snake. After this, I felt a deep sense of appreciation and thankfulness. I knew that healing was taking place. I then had the experience of reliving many instances in my life, throughout my life, where I had been an asshole to people that I cared about. And I was now reliving these experiences, not just from my perspective, but simultaneously from my perspective, from their perspective as them. So I was seeing it through their eyes, and I was feeling everything that they had felt, everything that I had made them feel by treating them poorly. And I was also seeing the situation above it all as an observer. So from all of this perspectives simultaneously, I was reliving these instances in my life and experiencing them over again. But not just as me. So that, to me, that speaks to the interconnectedness of all life. And I believe that is what's happening when we die, when people relive their life, when their life flashes before their eyes. That's essentially what happens to me. I relived my life, like key moments of my life, but with the new realization that everything was me the whole time. So Okay, so that after that, you know, I went to hell, I went to heaven, I died, I was reborn. I didn't need to do the medicine again, you know. Don't push your luck, don't tempt fate. That's what I say. Um, because psychedelic experiences sometimes go bad. You know, and I believe that it could have gone bad if I would have. What would have been the point of pushing it and doing it again when I got the message I needed, right? So there are things you have to take into consideration when doing these medicines: setting, culture, the cultural container. I went to the place where this medicine grows. I was held in a container that was facilitated by. The experience was facilitated by a shaman who grew up with this medicine, who understands this medicine, who knows how to integrate the experience. And that was part of what happened later in my stay there. Was I met with a shaman, I talked to him about it, we processed it, I journaled about it. I also had already come into this experience with 15 years of study, meditation, spiritual practice. You know, like I said, I was approaching my trauma from many different angles. I didn't just show up and take a drug, which is what I am a bit concerned about with this possible introduction of these psychedelic drugs into our culture, which does not have a proper container. Very effective, potent medicine if the set and setting is correct. So I hope that that will be addressed as well. I do not think that anyone has the right to tell another human being what they're allowed to put inside of their body. I believe that one of the ways that we are controlled is by keeping our consciousness constricted and keeping us dimmed down and dumbed down for the sake of controlling us. And so psychedelic medicine has the potential to expand our awareness, to expand our hearts. A lot of good things could come from it if we approach it correctly. But with the culture as it is in America, the values that we hold, which are, in my opinion, quite vapid and vacuous and depraved and selfish and egotistical, you throw psychedelic medicine on that, you could actually make all those things worse. The ego could become bigger, and you could think that, you know, you've got it all figured out and that maybe you're God yourself based off of the experience you're having. If you're a person who hasn't done any inner work to begin with, it could go really bad. And, you know, like, I think it was the Aztec culture that used psychedelic medicines as a warring people. And they would go into these like frenzies. And I think the Vikings did as well. I think they called them the berserkers. When they were out raping and pillaging and murdering at war, they were on psychedelic medicines. And they were being fueled, I think, probably by dark entities, because you open yourself up to the spirit world when you imbibe and engage with these medicines. And there are good spirits, there are light spirits, there are dark spirits. And what you invite in depends on what you're bringing into the ceremony and the culture that you're contained within and the people you're surrounded by. And we need to be very careful. We shouldn't demonize these medicines. A lot of people, particularly Christians, they want to demonize everything. Everything's demonic. You know, no. God is in everything. And God has given us free will, and we've developed our hearts and our minds based off of the free will decisions that we've made, and we bring that heart and that mind that we have co-created, that we have shaped through our decisions that we've made. We bring that into the medicine, into the ceremony, and then that will dictate what happens as a result of interacting with that medicine. Nothing's that black or white. I mean, you know, so for me, psychedelic medicines have been extremely helpful. I don't respond to them all in the same way. I've used psilocybin mushrooms. What I found is microdosing works really well for me. Um, as a full dose, as a trip, where I'm actually experiencing it as a psychedelic, it's hard on me. And I've had experiences which were probably, I would say, a little bit traumatic in and of themselves, which is something that can happen. Not these medicines aren't for everyone, and some medicines may be for you and others not, which is why it's so important to make sure you do your due diligence in studying and researching anything that you do before you do it. Anyone who has a history of schizophrenia or mental instability, who hasn't schizophrenia, no, you don't do that at all. You don't do psychedelics at all, because you could go on a trip and never come back. Okay, so that's what I think. That's my opinion on it. We have to be careful and thoughtful and intentional with anything that we do, especially something like this, which is going to open you up to other dimensions. These plants have consciousness. Everything has a level of consciousness, and these plants have been evolving for a very, very long time. So that saying, be wary or be careful of unearned wisdom. Like, you could be given all this medicine or all of this information and wisdom by the plants, but because you've not done any work prior, you can't integrate it in a way that is for the highest good. You might use it for the aggrandizement of your ego. That's what I'm saying, that's the real danger in introducing these medicines into the American culture, which is all about aggrandizing the ego. And I find it, concerning that we are such a warring nation, so bloodthirsty and so eager to dominate, right? That we're going to introduce psychedelic medicines into that, where maybe people can spiritual bypass as a result of these medicines, just excuse their behavior because they transcend it. That happens. You can be an enlightened person, meaning you can have a very expanded awareness and still be a rotten person. Those are the people running the world, dark occultists. They understand how to reach higher levels of awareness, but their hearts are dark. So we've got to get our hearts right before we step into the arena of psychedelic medicines. So that's that. That's my experience with ayahuasca. Those are my opinions about introducing it into the American culture. And like I said, I don't think any man has the right to tell any other man, any other human, what they're allowed to do with their own mind. And, we shouldn't be suppressing or oppressing anyone's right to explore their own consciousness. So, good luck. If you're thinking about using some of these medicines, just do your research.